Good afternoon. It's time for the Tech Talk Show with me, Kazeem, this afternoon. And today we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic indeed, unlock the value of Azure Hybrid using Windows Admin Center. And you guessed it, I'm not alone, as usual on today's show. So on today's show, I've got Shannon Kuehn with me on the show today to help us understand today's topic really well. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, Shannon. So is it morning where you are? Is it afternoon or is it
It
evening?
is morning. It is morning, but that is perfectly fine. I'm used to talking on a lot of different fronts, right, all across the world. So I just went to bed earlier last night.
Okay, so Shannon, let's begin today's show with an introduction, right?
Sure.
So let the listeners know a little bit about you and what you do, Shannon.
Sure. So I am a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. I work on the enterprise platforms and tools team. We spend a lot of time talking with the broader community, and we focus a lot on Azure VMware Solution, which really tells that hybrid story and all of the tools that come with it, right? And Windows Admin Center is one of them. So we try and demystify what cloud adoption looks like for enterprises at scale. And that's everything from speaking to blog posts, to videos, to learn modules. I've written some of those, which are great, and it's a fun role. There's a lot of different things we wind up doing to help people out in that kind of broader community base.
Okay, so we're going to launch into the show without any assumptions, Shannon.
Sure.
So for those listening to us right now who are alien to Windows Admin Center, can you please help us with an overview of what Windows Admin Center is?
Sure. So I think of it like, so I think if anybody's familiar with IT, they remember the Microsoft Management Consoles or the MMCs, right? And they had a number of different snap-ins. They all did different things. You could control your servers at scaling. Maybe you had a centralized server. Well, it doesn't really quite lend itself well when we're talking about hybrid, right? We've got servers in Azure, we've got servers on-prem. It's one of those things where we came up with a way to unify that and kind of take it to the next level. So I think of Windows Admin Center as the MMC version 2.0. It's web-based, it's lightweight, and you can add a number of servers in your environment. Plus, you can connect to Azure resources, Azure Stack. You can connect to your Kubernetes clusters as well. So a lot of interesting things you can do, which to me tells the tale that, hybrid's here. Hybrid's here to stay, probably, let's be honest, right? And it's a great tool to give you that visibility across two different environments without having to RDP into servers, right? I think a lot of folks have realized allowing that over time is a security concern. So it's a way to give your admins access to servers without having to give them RDP access, if that makes sense. And RDP is remote desktop. So if you want to remote into a server to configure some stuff, you don't have to with Windows Admin Center.
Yes, thank you. So I think you've been able to help us condense it down from that definition you just gave about the Windows Admin Center. But I know there are still a lot of other moving parts to the Windows Admin Center. So do you mind to walk us through some of the other capabilities now of the Windows Admin Center?
Sure, let me share my screen. Hopefully you're able
Okay.
to see it. So I don't have it installed on my local machine that I'm using today to talk to you. I have it on a server in my home lab.
Yes.
Let's make sure, let me make this a little bit bigger here. So these are all of the servers in my on-prem environment, plus I have a couple of servers in Azure. So West US 2, we've got East US 2. When you add servers, it's as simple as clicking on add. You can add them like this. You can add them one by one. You can import a list, or you can search Active Directory, not Azure Active Directory, Active Directory. So that's what I did to get my environment up, right? And I have everything joined to an Active Directory domain. So if you're living in that world where everything's joined to an Active Directory domain, it's as simple as putting a wildcard in, and then my home domain is shakeen.net, and then you're able to search and add servers from there, right? So that's kind of straightforward enough. When you take a look at this, though, it gets pretty interesting. So I've got a VMware lab that I run, as well as I have a handful of physical servers as well. So if you were to click on one of these servers, this one is actually on a Dell Optiplex. It's a domain controller. And you see here, it's giving you a nice overview. So you've got the version of Windows installed, what the RAM is, what we're looking at from a disk space perspective, and then you've got, the manufacturer, the model, which is kind of cool. So if you don't have a great inventory in your environment, this is an awesome way to start building that inventory. If we were to look at something that's inside of Azure, it'll say the manufacturer is Microsoft, right? Which is kind of cool. And then if we go into, let's see, I'll pick this server. This is a util server of mine. I got a lot of stuff on here. I always do a lot of stuff here first. It's a VMware. So that's kind of a cool reality, right? I think this is where you start to unlock the potential with Windows Admin Center. So if you click on Azure Hybrid Center, now this has to be registered with Azure Active Directory. That's the only caveat. So you need to make sure you've got the right ways to activate that. It's just a permission. And this is documented within our documentation. Hopefully this loads fast. There we go. So this is kind of your one-stop shop for enabling a lot of hybrid services, right? So Azure Arc. Now I already have this on the server, so it's not going to let me install it. But if you didn't have it set up, it would be as simple as clicking on Setup, and then you start onboarding Azure Arc within your environment. You can onboard Azure Site Recovery. I wasn't able to put Hyper-V on here. That does, that's the only, I guess, piece you have to be paying attention to. If you want to use Azure Site Recovery within Windows Admin Center, you're going to need Hyper-V. And a lot of customers are different, right? They've got physical servers, VMware servers, or Hyper-V. And so that's just the only thing it would need. It would need a Hyper-V server role added. But you can do things like set up a point-to-site VPN. You can set up Azure Monitor, Azure Update Management, Azure Backup, and Azure File Sync. There's some cool pieces here that are coming soon. So the ability to onboard to Azure Security Center and to extend your layer 2 into Azure. So that's kind of cool, right? Each one of these drills in a little bit more. So here's the Azure Backup component. Now I don't have anything set up, but it's as simple as clicking on Setup, and then it will start taking you into your environment. It'll help you kind of walk through that process of setting up Azure Backup. Same with something like Azure Monitor, right? So you've got the ability of being able to just set it up here inside Windows Admin Center without having to log into the portal. Now, I do have, this gets a little bit wonky in terms of our demo environments. I have this registered to a different Azure Monitor environment, but I don't have access to the Azure Active Directory environment where this is registered. But it would be as simple as setting this up that way, right? Same with kind of going down here. And then, if you're familiar with the Microsoft Management Console, you come down here, you can do things like users and group management, right? You can connect to PowerShell and run PowerShell commands, right? You can connect to remote desktop, right? So you don't have to think about RDPing into a server. You could RDP in the browser, right? And then you've got the ability to, let's see, it doesn't want to, I was having some problems with this yesterday. I was getting all this ready to go, and then remote desktop doesn't want to play nice with me. But yes, you can add roles, and you can add roles in and features, and so so it gives you a lot here in terms of your ability to manage server environments.
Okay. Thank you for that quick walkthrough, Shannon.
Sure.
So which aspect of the Windows Admin Center, again, did you say is responsible for helping us managing everything hybrid? Can you just show us that part of it again?
Sure. Let me, let's do this because it's giving me some guff here with remote desktop.
And bear in mind, Shannon, it would be nice to also just mention some of this in out. Most of the audiences are listening in rather than those people on the call with us right now.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So I think it's the idea that you'll go here to your Azure Hybrid Center, and you can start enabling Azure Arc, which Azure Arc, what it does is it takes your on-premises environments and it makes it an Azure VM without you having to have that VM live in Azure, right? So that's what Azure Arc does. And then
Okay.
all the different hybrid services, right? So Azure Site Recovery is involved in disaster recovery. You could have Azure be your recovery site. You could set up a point-to-site VPN connection, and that's just for this computer, right? Azure
Yeah.
Monitor is the monitoring components. Update management is your patching. Backup file sync. So this is kind of where you would go to start setting things up, and you've got capacity to do it with minimal effort, I think.
Oh, okay, okay. So I want to ask about site and recovery really quickly. I know myself, one of the things that I love much about the Windows Admin Center is the fact that you could just click on an on-prem VM and hit the protect button and you're good to go. But the
Yep.
question I want to ask Shannon is when you choose to do site recovery with the admin center, where do we have the data being replicated to? Is it a VM up on Azure, or do we replicate it to a storage account on Azure? How does that work?
So good question. Uh, the older versions of Azure Site Recovery, you had to have similar infrastructure stood up in both on-prem and Azure. Now you're able to replicate to a storage account. So that helps you reduce overall costs. You're not replicating to kind of what I like to call a hot VM, a VM that's up and functional. You're replicating to a storage account. And when you flip and you fail over from on-prem into Azure, a VM gets created from the replicated data, and it's block level replication based upon snapshots. It gets spun up, and then your environment lives in Azure.
Okay. Okay. So do we also get to pay for, do we get charged for this VM? As the customer now, do they get charged for the compute as well? I mean, the storage account lives on the compute, right? So do we,
Right.
yes.
Right. So also a good question. You're only charged once that VM is live in your environment. So while you're replicating data and everything's fine on-prem and you're not having a disaster, you're only paying, I think it's $25 per node per month, which is pretty inexpensive if you think about a DR solution where you're only replicating your data into a cloud provider. A lot of times customers will replicate to a different colo, and then you've got your colo contracts and all of the software and the tooling that you have to buy in between both environments. You're only paying a flat fee on a monthly basis. Now, granted, the first 30 or 31 days are free, which is also great if you're starting to experiment with how do we embrace some of the hybrid functionality of Azure. But yeah, you're only paying for the actual nodes you're protecting, which is a pretty compelling story if you're having conversations with, people you work with, your boss, if you're trying to say, let's bring about cloud. I think it's a pretty cool reality. You're not being charged for that VM while it's being kind of in that replicated state, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Shannon. So we need to go on a quick break right now, and we'll be back
Okay,
in just a little bit.
sure.
All right, so we're back. You're welcome back. It's still the Tech Talk Show with Kazeem this afternoon. And I've still got Shannon with me on the show to help us respond to these questions. And hopefully, before we close out, if we still have some time, Shannon should be able to respond to some of the questions you probably have. So Shannon, I want to ask you about the deployment part of the Windows Admin Center. Is a tool that runs on the Windows server. So I want to check for this tool to be able to manage on-premises VMs, cloud workloads. Does it require that we install an agent on those on-premises systems, on-premises VM, to be able to do this management?
No, well, so once you want to do the management, yes. So if you want to onboard Azure Monitor, you're going to need an agent, right? Azure Site Recovery, you will need an agent, but just to onboard Windows Admin Center and connect to all your VMs, you don't need an agent, which is pretty awesome if you ask me, because of the fact that I don't know about you, but I always had, what felt like 10 to 20 agents on my servers sometimes. And this is an agentless approach to being able to manage your environment, but some of the Azure features, if you wanted to bolt them on, that's where you would see the agent installation happen.
Okay. So I want to be sure that the listeners get what we're saying here. The agent, does it require physical installation on our part, as the admin, or is this something that get deployed automatically?
So there's a handful of things you would have to do in order to set it up. But so like for instance, let's see if I think I'm still presenting. So you would just download this MSI and you would run it on whatever server you want to have it live on. Now you can do a highly available kind of failover cluster environment where you've always got an opportunity to get into Windows Admin Center regardless of a maintenance window. Or you could just have it on a handful of servers or one server that you go to for all of your administration work. So the Windows Admin Center is just this MSI installation. You click next, next, next a handful of times, and boom, it's on. And then you get into it by way of going to your server URL and over whatever port you decide, and then you just start connecting devices. So it's the actual Windows Admin Center does not require an agent installation. Things like Azure Monitor, Azure Update Management, those will require some agents to be installed on your VM so that they can register with Azure, and you can do things like monitor your server health, patch your servers, replicate your servers into Azure.
Okay. So thank you so much, Shannon, for whetting our appetite a little bit about the Windows Admin Center. But I
Sure.
want to check, Shannon, yes. So this very powerful tool, how much does it cost? You've just shown out how we can get it installed. So how much do we pay to use the Windows Admin Center?
$0, which is even
Wow.
more awesome, right? It's a free tool.
Maybe you want to say that again,
Right,
Shannon.
it's a free tool. I'll talk into my mic. No, it's a free tool. It's a super compelling toolkit that Microsoft has built at no cost to you, which is awesome, right? So you don't have to worry about having to get budget approval. It's free, right? So you just install the server or install the MSI, register your environment with your Azure Active Directory instance, and then you've got ways to connect your on-prem servers as well. So it's a pretty I think of it like the Swiss Army knife, right? It's a very comprehensive tool that you can do a lot of different things with very minimal effort,
We have all these many tools now that helps us make sense of our hybrid experience. That helps makes our hybrid experience really seamless today. We've got the Azure Arc, there's the Azure Sentinel, there's the Lighthouse, so many tools. And now we're talking the Windows Admin Center. So how does a customer know which of these tools to use for their scenarios now? You want to give us a guide on this?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I'm with you. There's a lot of different tools that you can use when you move everything into Azure, right? And as you start to become more familiar with the different things you can do. I think if you're a heavy Windows environment, meaning you're mostly running Windows servers, or you can also onboard Windows PCs, right? I think this is a great tool to get started. And if you're interested in learning more, you can always go to these learn more links here as well. You're never without guidance. Now, if you decide to go the portal route and you hear about Azure Monitor or Azure Security Center or Azure Arc, if you go in and you start standing up these services, the same learn more shows up, right? So Microsoft's been really good about trying to showcase ways to start without having to have a lot of questions, right? So this will take you into our documentation. Like if I were to click on it, there you go. What is Azure Backup Service, right? And this starts taking you into all the documentation without having to go too far. So I always think of it like this. If you're heavy on Windows, you're used to the Microsoft Management Console or the MMC, this is a fantastic tool to start with, especially if you don't have a lot inside of Azure just yet and you're just starting.
Okay, so for those new admins, is there something? Is there something they can work with now to get a good hold of Windows Admin Center that you'd like to share with them? Is this something that is super? Yeah, I can see you walk us through it, but just to put their mind at rest now, is this something super easy to work with? And are there resources that you want to share with them that they can leverage?
Yes. So there's a couple of, so there's a colleague on my team. His name is Thomas Maurer, and you might, or I hope I'm saying it right. If I'm botching it, Thomas, you can give me a hard
Yes.
time. He has done a lot of great tutorials on his YouTube channel, and I don't have it handy in front of me, but it's
Okay.
Thomas Maurer, I believe is
All
how you
right.
spell his last name. So if you search for him, he's got a lot of great kind of step-by-step tutorials that could help you out if you're trying to figure out how to onboard Windows Admin Center, how to install it. And then there's a lot of really good guidance in our documentation as well. I always talk about both fronts because sometimes people are more inclined to go and watch a video versus read through documentation. So this is all documented within Microsoft documentation, or nice plug to Thomas there. If you like following somebody who's engaging and can help you out, Thomas has a lot of great videos on his YouTube channel that could help you with setting everything up and kind of realizing the value of Windows Admin Center.
Yeah, okay. And do you also want to share your handle? People might want to also say hi after the
Sure.
show.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So you can find me on Twitter. It's ShanKuehn, so Shan Kuehn. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. So sometimes folks don't want to get on Twitter. They feel like it's a lot, and sometimes it is. So I tend to respond to folks on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So those are great ways to connect with me if you've got additional questions, if you want some info, if you're interested in kind of going deeper. I meant to look at this and I didn't get a chance to do it before today. There might be some Microsoft Learn material on Windows Admin Center as well. So Microsoft Learn is a free resource to learn more. And a lot of times you get a great sandbox deployed behind the service or behind the actual module. So you can start to feel like what it would, I guess, seem like inside of Azure. So that's another thing to pay attention to as well. So Microsoft Learn, I think there might be a module or two in there for Windows Admin Center. Thomas Maurer, if you want to get like a video tutorial. And then if you were to just go search our documentation for Windows Admin Center, you'll get all of the right documentation to start building this out within your environment.
Yes. Thank you so much, Shannon, for spending time with us today on the Tech Talk Show.
Sure. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, so you've heard it from Shannon today. Let's continue to keep safe. And remember, you can have a rewatch of this video on the YouTube channel. So it's the Tech Talk Wednesday on YouTube. And you get access to the previous episode on the same channel as well. I've got a colleague here in the studio with me. You want to say hi to my guest for me?
Hi, good afternoon.
So yeah, for me saying hello to you.
Hello.
Okay. So any last words from you, Shannon, before we say goodbye?
I think it always feels scary to kind of make that first jump into the cloud, but the same foundation is there, right? So networking is still the same. Parts of it are abstracted, compute, storage, etc. And so if you're worried about it, you're anxious, know that these learn more links, and it's not just in Windows Admin Center, you'll find this all over the Azure portal. That'll help you out. And then just finding folks to ask questions, right? So it's not as scary as it seems. I think that's the big message I try to land a lot because I think folks feel like, their job's changing, they're going to be obsolete. No, you're not, because the same core foundation is in Azure. It's just a different realm of things you can control, right? So there's a lot of great ways to get started and to kind of move forward so your skill set becomes more evolved in terms of the cloud.
Thank you very much. So here's where we're going to say goodbye on the Tech Talk Show this afternoon with me. So from myself now and Shannon is a goodbye, and let's do this again another time.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.